But let me tell you that Kees is the FIA vice president. FIA is nothing bad. It's the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile.
It's nothing bad.
No, nothing bad. No, but it could sound bad. But Kees is big, very tall. Yeah,
yes,
you can sit
impressive.
down, okay?
Thank you.
Oh, okay, be careful.
But the president is like this, right? I've heard you have a couple of Coca-Cola boxes so that he can stand on the Coca-Cola when he talks to you.
These are your words, eh?
No. You never protected, or you didn't manage Bernd when he was go-karting, did you?
No, but the fact that he won...
That's why he was world champion.
Maybe, because he didn't use Bridgestone tire. But anyway, the fact that he was junior world champion was the reason why I thought, okay, we can work with him. So not a bad thing, eh?
But you know, I was on Bridgestone world champion.
And you won with, okay, so.
But not with the Bridgestones from Kees.
No.
In karting, no.
He was too young.
Yeah, thank you. So, Mercedes, or AMG racing team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were sponsoring Lewis Hamilton and
Nico.
Nico
Yeah,
Rosberg.
yeah.
And you were
in charge.
You were in charge of, who was the best one?
Nico was the best.
Why?
For me, because he was the most intelligent and for tire testing. So actually he developed the tire, which finally we won, so I think a month later, the World Championship. But obviously Lewis was quicker. Yeah, but Lewis also...
Do you think he's still today the same? I mean, now Nico has...
Well, I don't know, because Nico is the world champion, and I think there are two ways, or more ways to Rome, and it's the same, there are more ways to win a world championship. The one who has the most points and develop the car in the best way can be world champion, or actually Nico is. But maybe on just one lap, maybe Lewis is quicker. It's possible.
But when I remember, because I was there too. I was the kind of the 50% money giver for. Actually, at AMG we paid a lot of money to you. You know, the funny thing, sometimes Kees used to come to me and say, "Hey, Domingos, I need 10,000." I say, "Well, 10,000, man. What for? I have a guy from Poland. He's really good. And he has no money." I said, we cannot sponsor a guy from Poland. Who the hell is that? So he said, Robert Kubica. I said, never heard of him. But okay, 10,000. So I gave him 10,000. And you know what happened? Years later, when I was in charge of the racetrack in Austria, we had a Formula 3.5 Nissan, whatever it's called, you know, this Formula. And he won the bloody race. So he's in the podium, and I hand him over the trophy. I said, "Congratulations, very well done." I said, "Sir, may I say thank you very much for the 10,000 you gave me 10 years ago?" I said, "Yes, thank you very much." So, he never forgot. So how many big names have you got in?
Too many to mention, but the same thing happened actually with Kimi. Kimi was a very unknown, reasonable karting driver because of his equipment. And actually my staff, not myself, but my staff saw the potential. So they called me and said, "Look, we need to give him a contract as a Bridgestone karting driver." Well, and we know what happened. So it was also...
What happened?
Huh?
What happened to him? Well,
are you a motorsport man?
No. I was just trying to get out. But you won the championship, right?
Yes, and well, so that was one example. We had many more. So basically every button.
But who was the best that you had in go-kart?
Yeah, but that's a difference. So because we're talking just about go-kart.
I'm talking about go-kart that then went into...
Yeah, but it's a different story. The best go-kart driver, in my opinion, were not the people who made it in car racing. So for me, the best go-kart driver ever was François Goldstein of Belgium. That was the best ever. Yeah. And then you have people like Danilo Rossi, Mike Wilson, yeah, they were experts.
But you know the story of Mike Wilson with Ayrton Senna? Have you ever heard of this story?
No, please tell me.
This is a good story. You know, Ayrton was, I remember in '91 when he won the third World Championship. He came from Brazil, and then he landed in Speyer with his private plane, and I picked him up to go to Boss. Because anywhere where there was free goods, he will be available. You know, Ayrton was a very rich guy, but didn't spend any money. So we went to Boss to pick up a couple of, you know, stuff like trousers and suits and this and that and that and that. And I'm driving, he's sitting next to me, and then he goes, Português, as he used to say to me, you know, Português. I would change one of my 3 world championship, Formula 1 world championship, into one of go-kart. And I say, come on, Ayrton, you must be kidding me. World championship, Formula 1. Yeah. It's my dream. So it went on. And in '92, he raced in Hockenheim. There is a German guy, I guess was from Rallyland Racing. So he came in and said, oh, Mr. Senna, all this. Say, who is your favorite driver? The one that you really consider the best driver in the world. So everybody was expecting him to say Fangio, Clark, Jackie Stewart, maybe Emerson Fittipaldi, one of these big names. And he goes, Mike Wilson. the guy from Rally Racing said, who? And I said, are you a motorsport journalist? He said, yeah. And you don't know who Mike Wilson is? 7 times world champion in go-kart? The guy said, no. Go back home, study, come back tomorrow, we can continue the interview. So this...
And he was right.
But you were not in go-kart when you was racing, right? Or
With Ayrton, yes.
With Ayrton, yeah?
Of course. Of course. My driver, I was mechanic for Peter de Bruin. We should have won here in Estoril.
Oh, yeah. No. He should have won.
No. Sorry, Domingos.
Come on.
You went up there. I'm very sorry.
No. Yeah. You can be sorry, but I will tell you what happened.
No, because I was there.
I was there too.
No.
Which year was it?
1979.
That's right.
Yeah. And in those days, there were 3 finals.
Yes.
And my driver won the first final, dominated.
Yes.
And the one who won 2 finals was world champion.
Yes.
So, and in the second final, my driver was leading again. So, no Ayrton, no Koenen, nobody. He was leading again. And with a few laps to go, the chain broke.
Correct.
So, and otherwise he would have been world champion. And Ayrton, very unusual for him, he made a mistake. He made a mistake in calculating because he let his teammate pass.
De Bruin?
No, De Bruin was my driver, Koenen.
Genau.
And he let him pass because he thought then we are 1-2. But in some stupid form of regulation, it also counted where you were in qualifying, so after the heats. And that's why Ayrton became second, because same points, but he became second and Koenen won the championship.
Yeah. But you know that...
And then the next year we won, we beat him again in Nivelles. I'm sorry.
But the chain broke was a mechanical problem, huh?
Of course. Of course.
I mean,
of course.
You were the mechanic.
He said he was a mechanic.
I just wanted to make sure.
I was the mechanic with Peter.
Then it's all right.
In those days, yes.
So you screw it.
Yes, I broke this chain because I was so nervous.
But you know that later, actually when then later, let me just tell why we have these 2 helmets here. This one is an important helmet because this is the helmet of Pedro Lamy. This is the young guy here.
You see, immediately for Portuguese you start to give compliments, eh? The young guy. But to me you say you're not old enough or you're not young enough.
Yes. But you are good, you know, you are like the port wine. Anyway, so this one is 92, the German Formula 3 championship. Actually, a championship that you also won. And you was the team manager of you when you won the Formula 3. So you see, sometimes you do not screw up. You really do good jobs.
Because the Formula 3 didn't have a chain.
So this is 92. And this one is probably the most important in our collection. This is the very first Formula 1 helmet of Michael Schumacher. Then he started in Spa. From Spa, he was driving then the Jordan, and then from there he went to Benetton in Monza. And the last race was in Australia. Then he came from Australia back home, and then he brought it to me and said, well, I haven't got enough money to say thank you very much, but I give you the helmet. That was really a big thing. And the funny thing was that my son, Mark, was racing with him in go-kart. Mark.
Yeah. 87 through to 89. Yeah, those were tough times for anyone who tried to get the better of him.
He was by far the best.
Whether it was on a home track, whether it was on a track abroad, whether it was in dry conditions, wet conditions, he was just the benchmark for everybody, no? So yeah.
But you know that then later he came to support Pedro, because he won the championship, Formula 3 championship for Willy Weber. And then they were looking for a good driver the year after to go for the championship. So I was just taking care a little bit of Pedro at the time. Then I told Pedro, maybe the best thing is you go to do the Formula 3 championship in Germany, because at the time was very, very competitive. And Pedro went there. He was driving for Willy Weber. And the first guy that helped you in Formula 3 was Michael, right? What did he tell you? That you're going to win the championship? You had to, huh?
I had to. I mean, Michael won in 1990, and then was 1 year that I think they were not so successful. And then I was European champion of Opel Lotus in 91, and I was jumping to Formula 3, and my dream was to go to England, not to Germany. Sorry to say, but that's the...
Tells me that.
At that time, I wanted to follow all the Senna, Hakkinen, Barrichello, everybody worked in Dick Bennett's in England, and that was my dream to go there. And Domingos very well decided and convinced me to go to Germany, to Willy Weber, and was great. I mean, we had the support from Opel, and it was a great year. I mean,
do you still have the record-winning number? You broke the record of most
at that
wins,
time,
right?
yeah, I don't know now, but at that time was I won a lot.
You won everything, more or less.
Yeah.
Marble Masters and almost Macau.
Oh, yeah. Don't talk about Macau.
But I think what he is saying was actually image at that time, because you should go to England. This was the thinking. But actually the German championship was very tough, because everybody was thinking when there was an international race, like Monte Carlo or the European Championship, the people from the German, they are class B. But in fact, they were quicker than the English, because I did with Bridgestone the European Championship in Le Mans, actually, which Michael won with Zanardi. But the Continentals were much quicker, same in Marlboro Master later on. And also, you were very fast in Silverstone with the European. But the imagination was you must go to England. But actually, Germany was very strong, the championship.
But did you hear that he talked about Macau?
I am happy.
No. Why are you looking at me?
I am happy to speak about Macau.
I'm
happy
was
too.
okay.
I had good results in Macau.
But I think he had difficulties.
You were the one who screwed up in Macau, right? No, not alone, but...
No. Yeah, I think, that it was a team manager's fault. Did not the right advice.
He's a nice guy, isn't he? He's a very nice guy. You remember that you were on pole?
I was on pole.
And next to you was another guy from us on...
Klaus Ludwig was second.
And we had then also Alan Law, huh? And the Portuguese guy, Nia Mourin.
Yes, exactly.
And we were on Bridgestones, the best tires in the world.
Thank you.
That was at the time, not today. At the time.
At the time.
And then I was sitting in the pit wall saying to myself, okay, now we were here like 600 years ago when we conquered that, and now we're coming back and we're going to conquer, you know, Macau again. So this was on one of these races where before the race starts, I was sure that we're going to make it. Easy, you know. This guy driving, Klaus Ludwig driving. So it preached on tires. And then what happened?
A little bit of ballast for the Nissan.
Yeah, no, but there was politics. You know, these guys had to drive, and then
Of course.
The problem was you were
it's
too
a compliment.
confident.
Well done.
They forgot the rolling start.
And he was too much confident. You never should think about your have something in the pocket before you see the checkered flag. You know.
He was new to the business.
Yeah, but anyway, we were always, you know, after qualifying, we were really happy with it, but we did know already that the start will be a disaster for us with the first long gear. And the BMW was used for standing starts, and we had rolling starts in DTM, and we thought we have to survive the first 2 corners, and we were sure that we will not lead after.
You did survive the first one. I mean, you missed the braking, but you survived.
Yeah, I got the braking, but I missed the first corner, you know. But anyway, we were fast enough to do it, and but Klaus had, he got kicked off by Pedro.
That's not what people say.
Yeah, from Klaus' side.
Yeah. Well, let's put it that way. You know, the Macau sometimes gets very narrow and then a little bit wider, and there was in the narrow side that they want to go both at the same time, where there is only
one space for one.
Space for one. But then Bernd was there, so I said it's not a problem because Bernd is going to make it.
Yeah, I closed the gap because I was probably 15 seconds behind after missing first corner, and I catch them up. But Macau is a place like not every road circuit, but it's to make a mistake, it's very easy
but
to do.
you didn't make a mistake, it was the wall that moved, right?
Yeah, you know, I was never like that, but I know it was my mistake. And and I crashed the car. It was the only crash in the 190 I had in all the years with
It was a good one.
It was a heavy one.
Yeah, you know that I saved the freight back home. That was good. I mean, there was not all damage. You know, we didn't bring the car back, so we saved the money. But there was still Alan Law.
So how did it balance with the prize money?
Which prize money?
No, we didn't. No, we didn't win any prize money, but maybe the prize money was less than the freight. So he did a good job.
He did. Always did a good job.
Yeah. So,
especially in Macau, he did a really good job. But I was sure we're going to win the race because this guy won the race on Saturday, the Formula 3. So everything was according to plan.
There were no moving walls on Saturday.
No, not in Formula 3. They were a little bit, you know.
Wider.
Yeah, that's what.
Always for the 2 saloon cars.
But then I said, the girl is going to save us. Helen. And then Helen didn't come by. I said, where is Helen? And then she came walking. Helen, what happened? Well, I just did what the 2 big boys did, so I put it on the wall. So we had 3 on the wall. So I said, okay, now knee Amorim, don't crash the plane. But he was okay, so he came third. So it was a good thing.
Yeah.
Bernd. Sometimes things happen.
But then my question, what did the big bosses say about this?
Oh, Jesus, no. Let me tell you, because, you know, there is a 7-hour difference between Macau and Germany. So I was by myself in Macau. Big bosses.
And did we have mobile phones in those days?
We had mobile phones, yes, we had.
But needed mobile phones?
No, because the way they were shouting in Germany, I could hear them down in Macau. Because I called first Norbert Haug. It was like, I don't know, maybe 8 o'clock in the morning in Germany. So I said, hi, Norbert. What happened? I said, well, actually, there are 2, actually not 2. We crashed 3 times. He said, oh yeah, how did we finish? I say, well, we finished 3rd. Who is that? Nia Amorim. The other 3. They are still sitting in the pits, so that it's okay. It's not a problem. Everything is under control. By the way, could you call Albrecht, the A from AMG, the big boss? Can you call the big boss and tell him that what? You think I'm gonna call him to give me this news? You bloody call him yourself. Boom! So I said, okay. So I took Bernd Schneider next to me. I said, just in case. So I called Albrecht. I said, hi, boss. Chef, good morning. Good morning. Have two news, one good one, one bad one. The good one is we save a lot of money in freight. He didn't get it. It was too early in the morning. Second one is all our guys crashed, and then it started shouting. You could not believe. So I put the telephone like 3 meters away, and we could still shout, okay. Then at the end I said, but Pedro won the race. Yes, I don't know about Pedro winning the race. But it was nice. So Bernd was a great guy to me. Was really good.
Me?
Yeah, sure, because you stand next to me. You stand next to me.
I was always wondering where the voice come from, overseas or out of your phone?
It was overseas,
But this was the same race where you advised him not to fight with me.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, would have been one Dutch guy less in the world or a Portuguese less in the world, Because normally, well, Pedro, that, I don't know, how many years we worked together at AMG? 10, 12?
Yeah, something, yeah.
The only guys that were always having fights were Kees and myself. But we always finish good.
Get out.
Yeah, I mean,
we exchanged
when we
opinions.
Yesterday, you even said, Kees and Domingos together here. And I said, why are you surprised? Because they used to have their... So last time I was with the two of them.
No, but he saved at least 2 times my job. Because he was the only one who had confidence in my choice.
Yeah.
Even here in Estoril.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Mr. Alfred coming to me at 1 o'clock. And
in the morning?
No, but I had maybe first 10 minutes to listen, and then finally I said, can I say something? And I said, Mr. Alfred, you're absolutely right. If our competitor is so quick like they were in warm-up, we will be last and second to last. But I think they will not be so quick because our tire will last longer. And he said to me, you are the only one, and maybe the Portuguese, who believe in Bridgestone. But fortunately at 4 o'clock he was wearing a Bridgestone cap and dancing in the pit lane.
And we got him leading the...
December 90, we tested here in Estoril, first time.
That's a good one, huh?
The fish was fantastic.
We were so lost. But actually, it was really, really good. But the best, because there are nice stories about the Japanese. Japanese are nice guys. But
absolutely.
So nice guys. So we had the first race in Nürburgring, second race of the championship.
In the second year.
In the second year.
In the second year.
Was everything.
Because I know what he's going to tell about our fantastic wet tires.
No, more than fantastic.
Yeah, more than fantastic.
So it was really good, When we finished up qualifying, there were 32 cars on the grid, you remember? You were there too. 32 cars. We were 32nd, 31st, 30th, and 29th. Good. Yeah. But from 29th to 28th, 2 seconds. And from 29 to pole, 8 seconds. Something like that. I said, oh, Jesus. And at the time we had Keke Rosberg, Nico's father, driving with Alan Law. And Keke is known for his dry humor, sense of humor. So I said, Keke, say something about the tires. I don't need tires. Just give me the wheels. I'm quicker on the rings. So there was. I said, okay. So finally, we had a big argument with Mr. Albrecht in the bus of AMG.
Frankly speaking, I think it was a one-way conversation. In the bus.
It was more an announcement to everybody else rather than a conversation.
And actually, I still believe that without Domingos, the partnership would have been broken there.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot imagine.
Because, but anyway, it was a one-way, so I remember very well, there were all the top people, so Alfred, Domingo, more people. And there was Yasukawa, Hamashima, and me.
Hamashima, you have to say, Hamashima is like what? Adrian Newey of the tires, right? He was like...
Your words, I don't agree, but he is famous.
He's famous.
But I do not agree with this.
He's not as good.
Well, otherwise he would still be in Ferrari, but
okay.
Nothing say
but
nothing more.
But he was good at the time.
But anyway, he was the technical manager.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the bus was like this, you know.
So you don't have to tell me, I was sitting in the hospitality tent.
You could see it.
On that day, yeah, I saw. The people go in with the heads down already, and with notes, keeping notes and preparing for everything. I did not, to be perfectly honest, I mean, we're talking 90, this is what, 92?
92.
Yes.
So I'm 22 at the time. Sitting there, I did not...
I think that Horn, the South African guy,
was
in a better position than we were.
Yes, absolutely.
To go in with
the head down,
already.
absolutely. And I was not at all aware of the gravity of the situation.
There was
what was going on. I was just, everybody's walking into the bus, the heads down and scared and documents, and then next thing you know, the door closes.
And the bus started to move.
And then with a little delay, the whole thing, I mean, it was incredible.
And it was
everybody in the tent.
One-way conversation.
Yeah.
So,
all the guests in the tent, nobody talking, we didn't know what to do.
And especially because there was no answer from our side.
Yeah.
Alfred became even more louder.
Of course.
Yeah.
All the time.
Course.
So, and the Japanese didn't say anything. And then fortunately, Domingo spoke a little bit on our behalf. So, and then all of a sudden, Yasukawa said to me, Kees, say something, say something. So, and then I said something. And then I appreciate very much what Alfred said at that time. He said, you are a poor guy because your boss should speak. And he didn't do. So, and that calmed it down, and finally we found an agreement that in the wet, the 2 cars were on Michelin and 2 cars on Pirelli. Yeah. And as soon as the track was in a condition that you could use intermediate or slick, they would change. And fortunately it dried out, so in the race we...
But you have to say that the week after, we sent 2 cars to Rome. Bernd was there and Klaus, and they were 1 week testing. And the race
it was very good, because frankly speaking, in 1991, we escaped because we knew that we had a problem with the wet tire. But fortunately, it never rained during an official event. And then Nürburgring, okay, was disaster. But we learned a lot, so we had a massive, really massive wet tire test program and development program. And I think we could be proud, because afterwards, first thing was Diepholz, a wet race, where everybody was laughing. Now it's time for AMG Brits to be beaten, and we beat them.
Yeah.
And the best one was after in Nürburgring, where we beat even the four-wheel drive Alfa in the wet.
But you remember, that was in 92. But in 93, there was the year that Bridgestone internally decided to enter Formula 1. And that the same weekend, we had a race at Nürburgring and the Imola Formula 1 Grand Prix. And all top guys from Bridgestone came to Imola. Was not Watanabe, was the one before.
I think Kaizaki.
Kaizaki was the big CEO, 5th floor, Bridgestone headquarters, own elevator. I mean, really godlike. So everybody was there. The president, the vice president, the general manager, the racing manager, and Kees was at Nürburgring for the race, DTM race. So I was in Formula 1 there, in Imola. So, and I see all this Bridgestone delegation coming.
I have to say one thing, but sorry to interrupt. of course, the two Japanese, let's say the senior Japanese, were not in Nürburgring because they were afraid of the Nürburgring.
You know, from the year before, you know,
So they said,
maybe
Dutchmen,
the
you
bloody
organize.
Germans are going to cut our heads up.
So, and then
So they came and said, Domingos, how is everything? I said, everything going well, sir. And how is it Nürburgring? I said, we could not race, we could not test because we have no snow tires. Huh? I just saw the snow tires, snow tires. So I said, I'm very sorry, Kaizaki, I'm very sorry. Then they got on the phone and called Kees.
what is happening? So, sorry, everything is going well. Why you don't bring the snow tire? So because we bloody don't have any in the program. It was crazy.
But it was so nice.
Yeah.
I mean, we had such nice times with them. But then we had when you go back to Michel, he was racing with Marc in go-kart. Then we helped him a little bit. And then he, in '91, he raced when DTM, right? Was it 91 or 90?
Michael?
Yeah.
91. I think.
90.
91.
Oh, the season final. you mean?
91, yeah, no, only the final. I think in 91 he did DTM. I replaced him when he get in Formula 1.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. 91.
Because I think
He did not start.
you arranged something in the final race in Hockenheim with him.
This was 90.
It was a good organization.
Yes.
Okay. So you remember? You remember what happened? Because the guy was not quick. He had a problem in qualifying, so he started 15th. But it was very quick. It was quickest on the warm-up of Sunday.
But he
We're
was
talking the
racing
final race now.
Final race.
Yeah, in
But he was
90.
racing F3 on that weekend as well, wasn't he?
No. He was only racing the DTM.
With Sauber,
he,
yeah? He was racing with Sauber together?
He was with Sauber together, yes. And he did a couple of F3 1000 in Japan.
Nippon.
Yeah, because with
Former Nippon.
Yeah, with Yaskawa.
One race he did.
Yeah, he did.
With the route in Sugo.
Sugo, yeah.
Yeah, one race.
Because which Hiroshi arranged. He was a nice guy. So he started 15th. And we had you remember at that time we had the drivers briefing before the race. So we were all together, drivers and team managers and everything. And there was a big fight for the lead. We could not win the championship anymore, but it would have been either Audi or BMW. It would be Stuck or Cecotto, Johnny. So Johnny came in and said, you blah, 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 because Johnny drove for us before, for Mercedes, you remember? So Johnny came in and said, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I said, Johnny, you just calm down. We brought Michael Schumacher to shoot you up. Okay? So don't get excited. Everything is arranged.
Nice, Portuguese.
But I said that, could I?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, the guy was 15th. So rolling start, you remember that one? Rolling start.
I have it in my head.
And Michael is 15th. I mean, he's, almost in Frankfurt instead of Hockenheim. So they start, first corner, so I see cars going left, right, lots of dirt, and I wait. Dust comes down. I look, who's there? Cecotto and Schumacher. Finished the championship. Next step was, you remember the little Franz from Schnitzer? You know the chief mechanic, the old guy? He came with a big hammer. Where is the Black September? There was me, the Black September. He wanted to kill me. And then Cecotto, still today, when I see Johnny, he said, you screw my championship. I said, Johnny, believe me. I mean, you could have tried 10,000 times again.
To T-bone you.
To T-bone from the 15th place to you who were on goal. Never.
Yeah.
You're right? But still.
But it looks strange. Because he came inside over the grass, Michael, and just get him in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like center.
And if your speech before, I mean, come on.
It's obvious that you did that.
Because this is the reason I never say something like that, because if it happens, you're in trouble.
But France wanted to kill me.
Yeah.
That was a good one. And everybody was laughing, you know. Wow, wow, wow. I said, no, 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 no. Because still today, Johnny is convinced Domingos did that in purpose. I mean.
Yeah, but you did. Honestly, no.
Yeah, no.
I think it's going to be.
Pedro had a good thing. I said in 94, 93, he did the F3000, almost won the bloody race.
I didn't want to win, so I threw away.
Yeah, it was the only championship where you just missed at that time, and you came second.
Yeah.
1 point, right, to Panis?
No, 1 point. To
Which
Panis.
championship?
3,000.
3,000?
No, it was really, they were fighting till the very last race. Actually, Pedro was ahead of Olivier Panis in that race, and so you, for a certain moment, he was champion.
There was no go right?
Yeah.
The last race. We went,
So, and then something happened. It doesn't matter. So, 93. So, in 93, he did already Monza, first race.
Grand Prix.
Because Zanardi had the big accident.
Yeah,
So, and Ayrton was pushing for Pedro to get into Lotus at Zanardi's place. So we arranged everything, so he came. So he did 93, and 94 he kept going on Lotus. Then I remember I was sitting in my office at AMG in Falterbach, and his father called. Was after the death of Ayrton. Must have been like, I don't know, maybe
3 weeks.
when was it?
3 weeks later.
The Silverstone.
My accident was 24th
Yeah, 3 weeks after.
May.
May. So like 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
Of the,
pretty close.
yeah, very much. So the father calls me and says, "Oh, Domingos." I said, "What happened?" "Big accident." "What happened?" "Pedro crashed in Silverstone." So I said, "Okay." "No, okay." I said, "What happened?" "Yeah, the wing broke and he went off and went into the tunnel and got out of the tunnel on the other side, but only him."
The tunnel, pedestrian tunnel, not the...
Can you imagine?
But these cars were, I think, not very safe and strong. Because I remember also Monza Donnelly.
No, it was
Yeah, it was
very
a few
very
years,
fun.
before.
Where he was
Yeah, but
just
was-
sitting
but was
just in his
probably
seat.
the
I was
same.
there.
But then but then he, you know, he was a big one. I mean, really big one. And then he stayed in Northampton at the hospital for I don't know how long. And then when he
2 weeks, like 2 weeks, and then I went to Bad
then he went
Wiese.
he went to Austria,
Austria, Bad Wiese. In Germany, yeah.
Germany, but
But with the Austrian.
so for the recovery because they were good. So after he could talk and walk and something, I said, well, we have to give him a go. So I said, we're going to give him a go with the Mercedes. You remember that?
Yes.
With the DTM. So we put the DTM car in Hockenheim and we put Pedro in. I said, when he starts up the engine, if he doesn't bloody jump out of the car and runs, then we've got him back. So he was strapped, everything went bam, 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 bam. So I could see his eyes, you know, like, because his eyes under the helmet are like Emerson Fittipaldi and Ayrton, you know. Suddenly they become like 2 sizes bigger. So he was, and then he started, so everything.
Was this in 94?
94,
94
right after, like
accident.
October or something, September, October of 94.
Yeah.
No, but we first
few-
went to you remember we went to the Formula One Grand Prix in Hockenheim, you and I. That was your first appearance at the race again after the accident. And he had both legs, but I mean, you know, in casters, and he padded like this on crutches. So we were wondering, okay, where can we stay with him? So we said, I have an idea. There's the best place for you to spend the time to chill. The Sachshaus, right? Now, what he didn't know was in the Sachs house was where they had all the grid girls. They were based in the Sachs house, right? So we come, him on the crutches. We went
That's
to
why
the
I knew it was the best place.
I don't know. So we went there, so you can
knows
imagine
where the
all the
grid
girls
girls
in
are.
there, and then him. Oh, poor you, what a view that was. Formula One driver. Terrible accident, look at him. Oh my God, can we do something for you? So he was sitting, you know, in that
It's okay,
big
it's okay.
lounge, yeah, with the legs up, and he cannot move, sorry girls, you know, so he has to sit there. No problem.
Yeah,
So
we don't want to know what happened next.
So
Yeah, that's
we
good.
go, no.
You know, legs up
So the
and
girls
things
get
like
ready.
that, you know, something.
To get to the grid, Formula One grid, right? Okay, now the Sachs house empty, no more fun for us neither, so we thought, okay, time for us to also go. So we go into the grid, and we had passes to access the grid, and there's a Portuguese journalist who did not have access, and he goes, guys, can you do me a favor? Can you take my camera and just make photos, you know, and then finish the film. It's a fresh film, 36 photos, you know, old school still, every photo, you know. So we went, yeah, leave it to us. What do you think? It was only grid girls we photographed. You know, you wanted photos of the cars, of the drivers, of the things. So we filmed. And the thing was, he could not check it, right? So when it was through, we gave him I'm going to send this right away to Lisbon, to the newspaper now. Oh, thank you so much. And we're going, yeah. But the photos were nice, I'm sure. I never saw a single one.
For a different magazine
collection now.
Yeah, but you know, the girls all recognized him, so they were very forthcoming and, you know, making photos with him. It was fantastic.
And he was taking the cell phone numbers.
Was there cell phones there? Yeah, but very beginning, like there was still these,
We were sponsored by Vodafone already in the States.
Oh,
Yeah.
D2, Mannesmann, 94 already?
Yes.
92, exactly.
That
It was just the starting. I mean, in 90,
Oh, that was the
91 or 2, it started with this cell phone.
But you know the funny thing that Pedro, after he had the accident in Formula One, he went to, you know, he did this test at Nürburgring with Mercedes, and then later he raced with you in Le Mans, 1999. What was the flight number? What happened, Pedro? Tell us a little bit.
I have no idea because we didn't fly.
No, we didn't fly. I didn't know how that thing worked, actually.
Come on.
We had the heavier tires in front. We were running the rear tires in front. That was the reason our car.
But you know the thing is that when Mercedes does things, they do in style. So we had 2 practice flights on before.
The first one was on Thursday when Mark Webber checked the car because I was going to go for qualifying again. We were only 5th or 6th. We were not so fast because we were actually struggling with engines in the beginning in testing, and we have to downsize the horsepower. And then we took off aerodynamic to get the speed done, and this was the critical moment. But we also tested that at Hockenheim, and we were pretty sure that our car is safe. Because the cars before, 97, 98, they even have been more sensitive. But with this cars, we never raced at Le Mans. We did 97, 8, only 2 hours, then the engine broke, and yeah, nothing happens there. But in 99, it's, we did know the problems of this kind of cars, but we were 100% sure it's not happened to especially this 99 car, because we simulate a lot, and we never had any problem with
testing Fontana for
hours.
hours.
Fontana, we did 30, Hockenheim high
30 hours test. We did in Fontana.
Yeah, and but Fontana, you know, it's a bit different because there's the banking and there's no curbs, there's no bumps, there's nothing to
help flying.
Yeah, to help flying, to take off.
Take off.
And also another issue, you know, it's in fact more if you get slipstreaming. We had only 3 cars at Fontana. And we never had big slipstreaming as well. And the problem starts over 300, and Fontana we just had once 300 when you're coming out of banking to the infield, to the chicane. You remember when we went up the chicane? And I myself were pretty sure that we do not have these problems. Until Mark Webber, first time on Thursday, flew.
And he was a little bit scared.
He was really scared, and actually afterwards, we recognized that this was probably the worst accident of all our 3 flights.
And that's the one that was never caught on
never
camera
shown.
because
And
the
we
cameras
all
were
did
not set
not-
up yet on Thursdays
Yeah,
at
we
that
all
time.
did not really
Was dark.
notice this is a real serious problem.
Was in the dark, yeah.
No, during the day. And he was behind the Audi, and he followed him. And Frank Bieler told me that he said, in these days we were much faster. After the kink, we will let him by. And he watched mirrors, and the car was gone. He said, "Where's the car? Where's the car?" And he was really scared that he pushed him off or whatever. And the lap after he passed, and the car was standing next to us. He said, "Oh, okay, maybe he had a technical problem because it didn't look so heavy accident." Because he did a full
circle,
loop
yeah,
and landed like this on the wheels and was standing parked on the barriers. Even I passed it by and thought,
Australian work.
yeah, and I said, it's broken. And Mark told me after that when he took off, when he watched down, he could see the trees from top. And these trees are there very, very high. This must be, he must be very high in there.
But this was which part of the track?
This was exactly the same part where Peter flew.
So on the way to Indianapolis,
exactly,
between
the
Mulsanne
little
and-
king,
the little king.
Exactly, and he was exactly behind Frank Wheeler on full tanks, and this is the worst thing in this kind of cars, because if you got on full tanks, the rear goes even more down, the tanks are in the rear, and the front up, and if you have good slipstreaming, then this can happen. This happened to him.
That was the first time. The second one?
Warm up, Mark Webber again, and because they rebuilt the car, we had another car, and he just had to do a check lap, and he followed the Viper, and he flew next time.
But at that moment,
But that is Mulsanne now, right? The second
This was
flight
over
was
Mulsanne
Mulsanne.
over the hump.
But it's funny you say for the first flying exercise, there is no evidence, no picture, no film,
Yeah.
nothing. So we Bridgestone, we had 3 teams, so Mercedes, Courage and Nissan. So I was in charge of everything. And then in the morning, on Saturday, the warm-up, you go to say hello to the team. So, okay. So during warm-up, so they rebuild the car. During warm-up, I arrive in the Mercedes garage, open the door. Everybody's watching the screen. So I come in and have a different, I would say, sense of humor. So I said, oh, they found pictures of the accident of Mark. And they looked at me, you idiot, this is live. This was the second exercise.
Was the second one, yeah.
The second flight, yeah.
And then we had the third one. But before that,
we had a meeting.
Meeting. And
Big
what, how was the meeting, Pedro?
The meeting was great. I mean, everybody was scared. I was scared. Because after the first fly, Mark Webber flew, but we didn't know what happened. I was not conscious. I didn't want to look into, I think. And then when our second fly, we had the meeting and we had to decide if we participate or not.
The drivers.
The drivers. A meeting with Norbert. Who was in the meeting? All
Hubert,
drivers.
Was Professor Hubert?
I picked
big
Hubert
one.
up from the airport. You remember on the
Gerhard,
scooter to
Gerhard,
get him there.
Matthijs,
Matthijs, yeah.
I was there, and Norbert,
Norbert, Aufrecht.
Alfred, and we were in contact with Canada. You
Yeah,
remember?
because there was Formula 1.
Formula One.
We would-
And Norbert and Hubert say, just call Adrian Newey,
Yeah.
because at the time he was at McLaren's, and ask him what we should do.
Yeah.
And I said, Norbert, shit, Adrian Newey doesn't even know where bloody Le Mans is. Why are you asking him what to do?
Yeah, and
But,
this is
you know,
3 hours before the start.
Yeah.
yeah. And then?
And then he asked to everybody if we want to race or not. And
Who was the first one to say?
I mean, we had a boss there. Was Bernd was our
Bernd was the
leader,
boss.
and he said, yeah, to give his position. I don't know what was inside of him, but
we had. Yeah, of course, we was discussing all the situation what's happened, because the worst thing of what's happened if you have an accident again like this and somebody get hurt or maybe even worse getting killed of the Mercedes history, maybe the whole motorsport programs can stop.
Yes.
Yeah, because this
And
was
that
only
was-
the second time you were back to Le Mans after the
Exactly.
65
This was
thing,
the
right?
Second
after
time.
the
We were there
50s.
98 and
this
there was 90.
was a big responsibility for us, you know. On one hand, we spent a lot of effort in this project, a lot of money too, and then to take the decision to start or not to start, and of course, if Peter Dumpy, when he flew into the forest and he would kill any marshal, only 1 or 2, or it doesn't matter, I think there would be no Mercedes-Benz world champion in Formula One.
No.
They would stop immediately everything, and that means it was a big decision. It was not just thinking, oh, we do or not, and if we lose or what. Do not lose, you lose. You could lose everything. What they built up for a long time, you know. And that was not an easy decision. It was not made just okay, we do, because we didn't know if this happened again. It's a big impact. Could have a big impact in the whole program. And finally, yeah, we talked with Gerhard, and he said if we put the rain downforce on the car, it makes especially the front more safer because you've got the blips in front, and this is the downforce from top. It's more safe than the downforce from the underbottom, because if the car goes up, it doesn't help. This blips helps you to survive or keep the car down, and we were pretty sure if we put everything on, we are on the safe side. But, yeah.
Actually, we were on the safe side. And then he flew because he did a small mistake. Because at the time, you remember, we said, don't do any slipstreaming and don't touch the curve. And then Peter Turnberg, what did he do?
Yeah, but you know, it's always easy to say and more hard to manage all the things if you follow one. Because Peter, when he followed the Toyota, he was battling for third place, I think. He always went off, half car off the slipstreams, and this was the reason he touched the inside curb, because he don't want to be 100%. Yeah. He just moved half car to the right, and then this was the reason he touched the inside curb. And actually, we found this out, I think, a couple of weeks later when BMW, they had a team there to film everything, and they give us the pictures. Otherwise, we even wouldn't know that he touched the inside curb, because it was not a big thing.
But you know the funny thing that in this year, all of the manufacturers flew.
I mean, all this kind of cars are just have been representative of this. And
Porsche flew in Road Atlanta, BMW flew, everybody flew.
Yeah.
But you know what happened then after with Peter Turnberg? So he flew. And then suddenly
we saw many of replays because we tried to find out what's happened exactly, and then
I remember it took terribly long until we heard.
But no, it was not so. No, he was on the radio.
In the lounge where we were.
No, he was on the radio because I just went out of car, and you went into the car. Peter was after me, and when I was in the container to change, I heard the speaker, our safety car out, and blah 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 in French. I did not 100% understand what's going on, but I heard the safety car is out, and then Franck Lagorce, our teammate, came in and said, "He flew into the forest. He flew in the forest." I said, "Who the fuck flew in the forest?"
No.
He said, "Peter is flying into the forest, and a big one, a really big one." But he's safe. He was on the radio. He was.
No, but he was he was already in the car, Franck Lagorce, because I just jumped out, and then I think he was on the radio, something talking, yeah.
No,
Peter was on the radio and said.
Frank was on the radio.
Was on the radio.
Because he was in the car. I was not in the car anymore.
In the car.
No, I was out. Just stopped, and then was a few laps.
Frank was on the radio and said, "He's flying. He's flying. He's flying." And I said, "Who is flying?" I mean, I thought he was flying. So I said, "This guy is great because he's flying and he's still talking." But no, he was on the ground. He was telling that the other guy was flying. So 5 minutes later, I hear, "Team manager car number whatever 5. What was it? Yeah. Team manager car number 5 to the race control." So I say, "Oh shit." So I go to the race control, and the guy tells me, "You have to pick up your driver." So where is he? The police station. Police station. I mean, medical center. No, police station. Why? He has an alcohol test. I said, "Listen, he's a racing driver. He cannot be drunk." No, you have to go. So I came down. I said, "These bloody French." So I came down, run, jump in the car, in the Mercedes that was there, and go around to go to the police station, which was at the end of the straight, the Mulsanne straight. And I'm driving, and I come in the paddock, and I drive out of the paddock, and I see a French guy in front of me, looking at me. I was, with a Mercedes AMG T-shirt like you. And I see the French guy doing. I opened the door, jump out, kicked him, jumped in the car again and drove. Because I had to get a little bit of adrenaline out. So I arrived at the police station and I see Peter, white. I mean, he was not dark anyway, but he was bloody white, you know, maybe even metallic white. So I said, Peter, what happened? I don't know, I mean, he's Scottish, you know, so when they get excited, they have this Scottish accent. It's only like Alex Ferguson. When he talks, nobody understands. Said, oh, I don't say, no, the English comes with an alcohol test. I said, hey, why you do an alcohol test to the guy? He said, Monsieur, le pilote a eu un accident sur la route nationale 10. Because you know, all straight, it's the
big road.
You know, it's the route nationale 10. So it's on the paper. He has. So, I mean, he was, you know, -2. You know, because so I got Peter and brought Peter back, and then he came to the medical center. From medical center, he went to the hospitality. And I remember that at the hospitality, he arrived, and everybody was, you know, clapping hands and say, "Oh shit, the guy is there." And then he said, "Can I have a spaghetti?" I said, "He's okay." Bloody hell, he's back to life.
But if you recognize, and he flew when he took off, and first of all, he missed the concrete post from the electricity what the French guys have, maybe by 1 or 2 meters. If he would hit that one, it would be over. He missed the advertisement bridge from
the bridge that Marc. He was the guy. He put the bloody bridge.
And then he
there.
flew into the forest. They just cut off the trees in this place, and he landed on a tree stump, and it came into the monocoque on the passenger side. I mean, this was more than luck that he.
No, it was everything planned.
Everything was planned. It was really
Jesus
on the edge. You know, I mean,
but I think what Dan said with major decisions, now we can laugh about it.
But in this
it could have been a completely different story.
Yes, especially when I flew back on, that was in the night of Saturday to Sunday, and I flew back with Hubert, Professor Hubert, who was the big boss of Mercedes Car Group. Was Hubert, Peter, myself, and another guy, I can't remember whom. And we flew back to Stuttgart, and we flew over Paris to let Peter out for him to fly to Edinburgh or Glasgow. Then we flew. And the whole flight, he didn't talk. And Peter couldn't talk. I mean, he ran out of words while he was flying. He never talked. And Hubert tried to, you know, and then on the way from Paris to Stuttgart, then I said to Professor Hubert, "Oh, we are lucky." I said, "Yes, we are very lucky, very lucky." And the only thing that he was, I said, "We're very lucky." I said, "Yeah, I know we're very lucky, but that's enough." It was unbelievable, unbelievable. So if you imagine, that was
anyway, you got a bonus for the
I got the bonus, but this is actually while I'm listening, I'm thinking whether I actually went and asked for a bonus, because that clip, nowadays you would call it, it went viral. Had there been social media and all these communication channels that there are today available back in the day, you would have had millions of views and, you know.
Absolutely.
But of course, the bridge features prominently, because also the angle, the shot, you know, the zoom shot is absolutely
That's why it's
perfect.
called Bridgestone.
Is that the Bridgestone?
The Bridgestone. That was the Bridgestone. Yeah. I mean, I remember I was in the pits and I looked, and I see this bloody thing flying, missing the bridge, missing the post. The post you couldn't see.
No.
But missing the bridge. And I said, "Oh shit, where is it going to land?" And Marc said, "No worries, they cut all trees." So I knew that he cannot land in one of the big trees. But I was worried. But he landed in, you know, the tree was cut
Yeah, his
like
time
this.
hadn't come, as they say, right? I mean, it was not his time.
That was,
yet,
that was a big one.
Yeah,
That was really a big one. So.
Yeah.
Then we got back, 99. And because the thing was, in 96, we decided to, actually 96 remembers me of a nice...
Race in Sao Paulo.
No.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was the one that you won. That's why Opel were world champion.
Yeah?
This was a good
No, but
story.
before that, no. The 96, Aida.
Was ITC, yeah?
ITC. You were not, you didn't hear.
No, he had this wonderful test in 95, right? With us in Nogaro. Was it 95 where you tested to become our driver in 96? On JJ's car, the Cliff Calibra, the black Calibra. And as you know, learned from the best, everything was prepared. You needn't do the test. I mean, we had everything sorted. Yes, Pedro, he's the man. They still remembered him from Formula 3. But in any case, he came to test, and he took the car out, and mechanics made sure that the car was going to be really, really fast. And then you produced the worst engine blow-up of the Opel history in DTM and ITC. With the, you remember the hole you put in the engine on downshift after the long straight? Bum, 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 over. And he was going, what the hell? And that was that. So you never actually came to race for us because Tresa was but the sports chief at the time was terribly upset about this. Terribly upset.
But 96?
This was 95.
95. But the year after we had 96 ITC, where we raced also here in Portugal, we won.
Yes.
Thanks
the two red flags.
Thanks to
Simasen. Thank you.
Thanks to Bridgestone.
We raced 95 also here.
Yeah, 95 and 96.
But when was the two red flags, the two restarts with the big crashes in turn 2? Was 96? Yeah.
95 I won here.
Yeah.
96 was a bit, you know who has been responsible for the red flag? Ludwig and Franchetti. Because Franchetti tried to overtake him on the outside and Ludwig came
turn
up.
2. Yeah.
Nobody overtake me on the outside.
Yeah.
You know, second corner, he coming from the outside.
But you know,
Nobody overtake me on the outside. All the cars was big